It's very easy just to sit here and call the F1 2023 season boring. And to be completely honest, if you did that, I wouldn't blame you. This year has seen Max dominate like no driver has ever done before, with him not just having peak driving skills, but also having brilliant car reliability. However, more has happened than just that this year, and it may leave us with some hope that F1 in the next few years could be really exciting. At the start of the season, the dominance of Red Bull was really no surprise. We'd seen them top pre-season testing, free practice, and qualifying, and were coming in from a season last year where they'd been really spectacular. But that wasn't to say the grid didn't have surprises. For example, the quality of Aston Martin was really impressive, with their improvement from last season showing how potentially the new budget cap and wind tunnel regulations were working, and had therefore allowed them to catch up with the teams near the front. And we also saw this further down the grid, with Williams looking like it had improved upon its car and could compete for some points, with, in the end, that being correct. One major concern was that these new regulations to try and even the playing field would mean that teams would struggle to catch up by bringing upgrades throughout the season, due to the fact that there were more budget constraints. But McLaren certainly disproved that, with their mid-season comeback being phenomenal. They went from having races like Miami, where they were one of the slowest cars, to being consistent podium sitters by the end of the season. And while giving rookie driver Oscar Piastri one of the most special rookie seasons we'd seen in a long time. All this is well and good though, but how does it make the season and the future any more interesting? Well, my theory is that Singapore 2023 is the type of racing F1 is potentially moving closer towards. Apart from Red Bull, all of the teams have been very close this year, especially the battles between Mercedes and Ferrari, McLaren, and at intervals throughout the season, Aston Martin and Alpine as well, with every single one of these teams being on the podium at least twice this year. And well, in Singapore, when Red Bull got it wrong for the first and only time in 2023, what we saw was 3 teams and 4 drivers challenging for a win into the final lap of the race. An absolutely nail-biting end. As we'd seen over the full year, each one of these teams being barely separated during each race, with it mostly coming down to the drivers on the day, the efficiency, the setup, and the strategy of the teams and the cars. And for a change, Ferrari actually nailed its strategy, and Sainz won by a hair. But it showed us what we could have without a single team dominating. However, the best news to support this is that each team does feel they've underdelivered this year, and that they are to blame for why they're behind Red Bull, not Red Bull having a drastically better car. Of course, they're always going to talk the talk, but if next year or in 2025 the constructors can catch up to the Bulls, it would leave us with a grid that's very close, which is even to an extent being evident this year. Qualifying has actually been very close this year, with many different drivers challenging for pole position. And to back this up, the gap between the top 18 in Abu Dhabi was just 0.628 seconds, an incredibly small margin. See, the main reason the Red Bull seemed to be so fast was because of how easy it was on its tires, which is why at cooler tracks such as Las Vegas, the other teams always looked closer. And the Red Bull has been set up for a decent qualifying pace, with Max having 12 pole positions, but definitely more towards the excellent race pace. Whereas other teams like Ferrari, or even further down the grid Haas, who had really good qualifying pace, but just couldn't get the tires working correctly, seemed to fall back a little bit in the race. And the same goes with Aston Martin. Their race pace always seemed to look pretty good, but their qualifying pace and their ability to generate heat in the tires wasn't the same as Ferrari or Haas's. So I think Red Bull definitely found that best balance between the teams, but the other teams certainly aren't out of the running. This genuinely does give me a lot of hope coming into the next season. And despite as a non-Max and non-Red Bull fan, it being easy to say it was boring watching Max walk away with the championship, in a few years we will all look back at this as an absolutely record-breaking season. We have just watched history happen, much like when other drivers have dominated in the past. Subscribe if you're excited at the prospect of some closer racing in the future. We're going for 50,000 subscribers. Goodbye.